Good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing this early in the morning?
Oh, it's fine. I'm doing good. Yeah. I get up this early every day now.
Nice,
With
nice.
the job I'm working during the week. So it's fine. This would be a time where I would either be doing dishes or watching YouTube or like hanging out before I have to leave.
Nice. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for doing this as well. I mean, we're just kind of like wanting to talk to people who I think are doing really cool things at the moment and
Mm,
kind of
cool.
hoping, there's a lot of stuff going on globally,
Mm,
as you
yeah.
said in your video, but also certainly in the UK, there's a lot of resistance between artists and between audiences as to, how can we make it accessible and how can we prove that, it's worth people's taxes if you're going to put it in kind of a
Yeah.
monetary thing. Like, how do we prove our worth in a way? Um,
Hmm.
and I was kind of wondering, you talked a little bit about improvisation and collaboration and how that can be a really inclusive strategy, if you like, to make things more accessible. I was
Sure.
wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, of course. I'll try to do my best. I know there's a lot that I'm still learning and there's a lot that I'm still trying to figure out and especially as a white straight male, there's so many things, so many privileges that are automatic for me. And
Mm,
it's I my big thing is being aware to the multitude of issues, and I said that in the video too. But it's made me think a lot about like who I'm collaborating with, or what I program, and what I do in improvisation, and what can I do to
mm,
make it more inclusive, and who maybe the people I can start collaborating with. And I've been thinking about it, and the process was really hot over the summer. As I was doing those collaborations, I was like, who can I get start collaborating with? But then life happened, and I had to like attend to those things. But I think if I'm speaking to like my colleagues who look like me, I think we need to think about who we are collaborating with, and I think if we collaborate with people who don't look like us. And I heard this in a podcast recently. My friend Kyle Jones, he's a saxophonist in the U.S. He's like doing his doctorate at University of Missouri Kansas City, and he started this podcast where he's been interviewing musicians, kind of like people who are doing interesting things, like us, and they've kind of paved their way, not like the most like cookie cutter route that like everyone tries to do in the U.S. like going through school. But he was talking with Ryan Muncie. He's part of the International Contemporary Ensemble in New York, and he was talking about like who he collaborates with, and like the important thing was like collaborating with people that don't look like me.
mm.
And that kind of stuck with me, and I've been trying to think about that as I'm going forward, because right now it's tough to try and collaborate with you when you can't in person, and that's a whole other thing too.
Mm.
But I think if we start doing that, especially with who I am, I think it can show that you know we are diversifying, who we're collaborating with, and I think it'll start making things look like be more inclusive or look more inclusive. If that makes sense. But that's kind of where I am right now, and I really think that could help. And I think it's going to be a slow process. But that's kind of what I'm doing and how I'm thinking about moving forward. And again, I'm really open minded and extremely interested in hearing other people talk about it, because I actually that was kind of one of my questions for you as well, because I'm really interested to hear like other people talk about that too, because I think I have a lot to learn, and a lot to think about. So I'm like constantly collecting ideas about how I
Mm.
can do that better. So Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really like a couple of people have said to me, this is an opportunity where we can reformat a lot of our thinking and we can use things like technology. Obviously in a more traditional sense, we're not able to work together in person, but actually we can use technology for good, and we can connect with people. And I know that I have myself, I've met people through through the internet and through
Hmm.
friends of friends and via Zoom and all of that, um, as kind of a way of meeting new people and working that may have not happened had this pandemic not been you know such a big thing. And um, yeah, I really liked what you said about your improvisation space being an opportunity where people can come and there isn't an expectation of what is expected or what is supposed to be the right thing.
Hmm.
um, and that's what I've really enjoyed doing when working with you and doing the improvisation projects that we've done. And
Hmm.
there's no kind of set agenda,
Hmm.
or there doesn't have to be. And I think that that's something that we as classical musicians and improvisers, that's a tool that we can use to create communities and create more inclusivity. Um, because it's been such a big problem for a long time, but I think now it's been time for a long time to do something about it. And of course, it's been such a huge problem, but
Hmm.
let's seize the day now and collaborate with people, as you say, who don't look like us, or who are coming from a different angle, and
Hmm.
hearing those experiences, because fully acknowledging the privilege that, certainly from where I'm coming from,
Hmm.
I'm reading Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, and
Yeah.
it's a mind-boggling, some of the things that I didn't even realize I was so privileged to have at the time.
Yeah.
I read something recently that was like, if you're not stopped by the police and thinking this is the last day I might live, then that's white privilege.
Yep.
And I thought, yeah.
Yep. Because I've been reading, and I like stopped. I need to finish the book, and it was just because of life. But let's talk about race. I was reading that, and yeah, and again, there's like just so many things that we need to think about, and that was like one of the things that I read as well. And to kind of go back on what you were talking about with the agenda in classical music,
Mm,
that agenda, and like when we're improvising, there can be no agenda, like anything can be possible,
mm,
and it can help us redefine what we're doing, or like the process of doing something, or the how to do something, because and
mm,
I am always thinking about that with studio teaching, or like teaching in higher education, and like this foundation that music schools have created, to like, you have to do this, there's these things that you have to do, there's this repertoire that you have to play, and this, and like everyone does it. And
mm,
it's like, I think it's informing the way that I think about, what, say, for example, like what repertoire a student would be working on if they were like a college music major or something like that. Or, they don't have to do this. Why don't they work on this by this composer, or this or that? I think it's helping me, it's informing that why don't we change that too? Or why does that have to have an agenda that's the
mm,
same, or been the same?
mm,
So when you said that, that made me think about that. So
mm,
I think that's important now for anybody who's going into higher education, because I think there's a lot of power in higher education, and there's a multitude of things wrong with it as well. But I think I'm hoping like the younger generation that's being infused into the higher education will hopefully start doing some change.
mm,
Crossing my fingers.
mm. It's it's one of those things where, in a way, it can be useful to try and encourage change from the inside.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these organizations, like I went to conservatoire as well, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a huge reach and they have a lot of power and funding.
Mm-hmm.
And um, what you say about things like auditions, and
Mm-hmm.
it's often in our careers as musicians, it's a lot of box ticking,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's really hard to try and separate from your identity as a musician and an artist. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about kind of how you came into improvisation and
Mm-hmm.
how what kind of things fulfill you as an artist.
Sure, of course. Um, so I play jazz as well, as a saxophonist. So I had I have background in that with improvisation, that way. But uh, I've always noodled, and I think I said that in the video. But I think that's really important. I think just to sit down and like meditate when you play, and like to noodle around, to experiment, and to like emulate maybe somebody that you admire or a performer that you admire, and try, if you hear recording them, you try to, how can I sound just like them, or like mimic their movements, like if you're like improvising or just like playing like a little noodly part of a piece of music you're playing. I think that's like where it started for me. And then I was fascinated with sounds and stuff, like noise music type stuff, and like I can't even remember where I even heard some of those sounds. It may have been in like repertoire that I like had been listening to, like you know, something written. Well, a lot of our saxophone repertoire is written after 1945, but yeah, I don't know, something with extended techniques, and then I was fascinated with that sound. But I met a pianist when I was in Paris, my friend John Campanis, and he was really inspired by Keith Jarrett, a pianist, and sometimes I don't know if he's labeled as a jazz pianist. No, he is, but he notorious for these hour long or almost hour long improvisations, solo improvisations, and so John would do a lot of improvisation like that, like these longer form things that he would kind of create a form, or he would be attached to tonalities sometimes. But we started playing together, and I think I got him like to be more noisy too. So we kind of fused our two interests. So we were playing a lot, and I was in Paris, and um, I had like an epiphany one time when we were playing. Like I never felt this comfortable in front of an audience playing, like improvising. Like I walked out on stage, and like I know how I normally feel when I like walk out on stage, but that was like a completely different feeling. Like no nerves, because there was no expectations, like, you know, in my head. Um, and it was life changing. So I was like, this is super exciting. So I was wanting to do it a lot. Um, and being in academia, sometimes, you know, you don't always get to do that. And I always tried to be like this well-rounded saxophonist, like doing like the traditional things and like the agenda, like doing all of that stuff. And then also trying to follow my own projects. So, um, uh, I can tell when I don't do it enough, when I'm not improvising enough. And then when I get back into it, it's like, okay, this is what I really like to do. Um, so it's morphed. I've changed the way I like approach improvisation, but it's that's kind of how I got into it, and then it is what fulfills me artistically, I think. And I feel really fortunate to find a partner who is also really interested in it as well, and that's kind of how we met. Um, she's a violist and composer. We live together now, but she started her master's this semester in Boston. Um, but we've been doing some duo stuff, and it's been really filling. And we she's writing me a piece that we're playing like an online concert at the end of October, where I'm playing. So that's pretty cool. Um, so I'm trying to think of other things. I'm starting to like wander. um, Artistically fulfilling. Okay. Doing the video making stuff has been extremely artistically fulfilling, um, because I always like having some sort of outlet outside of saxophone or outside of music. to keep myself interested, or just like always kind of how I've been. But uh, I decided I wanted to upgrade my teaching setup, and I got this camera. I did like a ton of research, watched so many videos, like pandered over it for a long time. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then now I just like daily, I'm like listening to videos, or like listening to podcasts, and learning about how to use a camera, learning about like the technique of it, and composition and lighting and all of that kind of stuff. And how I can just use it better, how I can use it in my teaching, how I can use it to potentially make, my own content. So it's been really exciting. So then when I get back to the saxophone, I get excited. I'm like, okay, I want to prepare this so that I can record it. Um, so that's been really, really cool lately, and it's like getting me excited again. So
Mm,
I feel like during the quarantine, it was tough.
mm,
It
yeah.
was tough. So I feel like I'm
Mm.
finally like emerging after a long time. So
It's I think with the arts as well, isn't it? That certainly I know so many composers who are not just composers, but they also write poetry, or they also create art, like visual art, and
hmm
um, it's something that I've been thinking about during pandemic time, of trying to direct my energy to being more informed about other art forms and
hmm
how they can all kind of play into each other in a way.
hmm
And there's so many ways of expressing and discussing topics that are relevant to today
hmm
through so many different mediums. And yeah, I think, using the time to listen to podcasts, as you say, and learning new skills, and
hmm
it's a useful time to kind of re-energize and, artistically.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I completely agree. And you're talking about learning from like other disciplines. And when I was at University of Illinois, I had like a really nice privilege of working with dancers in the dance department. There was a really lively like collaboration between one of the professors, music professors, and dance professors. They've had this collaboration for a long time. They were actually in an improvisation and dance group in like the Chicago area, and
Nice.
they ran this class for years. And I was able to catch it at the very end before Professor Eric Lund, before he retired. So working with dancers, or and improvising with dancers was super informative. And like the way they think about a score, even the way we
Mm,
talked about a score was like was really interesting, how they see it, or how it's put together. um I would have to ask questions a lot about like, what do you mean by that? And like, oh well, we see it like this. I'm like, oh, okay. So that was always something I was taking back to what I was doing, and like more
mm,
traditional saxophone playing, or like classical stuff. But uh, that was super informative. So that made me think of that.
mm,
It was like a very, very cool time.
mm.
So
It reminds me of I did something similar with actors, where we were trying to we were given the task of creating a storyline,
hmm
um, with but we were interacting with actors as musicians and them as actors. We kind of conversing and finding a common language between movement and sound.
hmm
And yeah, it's so informative, as you say, to just completely switch the thinking and
hmm
say, well, this is one aspect of how we can communicate, but actually there are all these other moving parts where you can interact with, say if I play this note this way and I can move this way and that means this, and or this could be interpreted like this. And it was a really useful time to take away the more straitjacket way of thinking that we often come from as
yeah,
classical musicians, where this is the way to do it and this is the way that it's always been, so we have to do it this way.
yeah,
Which I think there's that's a whole other question, but a
sure,
lot of us are brought up in that way of thinking. But it's yeah, it's very liberating to be able to say, well, hey, I don't have to do that. I can take charge of my own way of expression, and this is what I have to offer.
Sure.
I think that's really useful.
I
Um,
agree completely.
mm. And then I just had one final question,
Sure.
actually, which was, I mean, what would you say to someone who is wanting to feel revitalized or, wanting to take charge of their own artistic voice? Maybe they're like an early stage career, or they're coming out of lockdown thinking, I've had so many things canceled, or I've just graduated. What would you say to them during
Sure.
this time?
Um, First, I would say that it's okay to feel down.
Mm,
Um, and I've had a hard time with that uh, because I'm like a naturally optimistic person. So when I feel down, it's like, well, this isn't right. Like I shouldn't feel
mm,
like this. Everything's gonna be fine. Like I'm gonna be optimistic. But I don't think that's right. Like I think it's okay to feel sad, or it's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel discouraged, and it's okay to like have things be put on the back burner or for timelines to be pushed back. Like it's okay. And I feel like there are so many people that tell you indirectly that that's not okay, and I really think it's all right. And when I've had some really nice conversations with people who we're talking the same way, and it's really validating, especially when I hear it from like people that we admire in the field or whoever, that they're experiencing the same thing, and they're like, yeah, it's okay to feel like crap.
mm, mm,
Because it is. So I mean, I would say that first, and then uh, I would say that it's important to follow your own voice, because I know me personally, I spent so much time trying to be like somebody else or match who I am as a musician or who I am as a saxophonist after somebody else. And I think that's good for a while, but I wish going along that I would have expressed my own voice more in who I am as a musician, or especially as a saxophonist. I feel like finally now, it's harder when you're in school. I feel like sometimes when you're taking lessons or you're studying with certain teachers, it's tough. But I wish that was more a part of studio teachers' curriculum, or just curriculums in general, like being true to an individual voice and like what
mm,
interests you. I feel like sometimes that's lacking. So being yeah expressing your own voice, and if you're interested in something, like exploring more into it. Like when I'm teaching younger students, like I don't mind if we spend like 15 minutes talking about something that's not the saxophone. Like one of my students is like making videos, and we only have an hour lessons, but we like sat and talked for 15 minutes about videos. And that's fine. And then he was more excited about playing saxophone after that. I don't know. I think that's like finding something you're really interested in, and like really going for it, and being okay that it's going to be a process.
mm, mm,
So the personal expression is really important to me, and like doing what you love. Like I'm really, again, I'm big about optimism. So like I really like doing what you love. So yeah, if there's someone out there who's feeling down, like it's okay, and you know you use your own voice to keep moving forward, because there's no perfect track, and there are so many people who are in the same boat or feeling the same way. Like sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who's
mm,
feeling like this. In my community, everybody is getting these things and these things, and I'm the one who's not getting things, and that's not true. There are so many people who are in the same boat.
mm,
You're not, and we're gonna get through it. And things happen at different times for different people. Um, so I just try to keep moving forward and doing what I love, because I
mm,
feel like that's what's really gonna motivate people, or get you excited and inspired, is like doing something that you really like to do. Um,
mhm,
so
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a time, isn't it, where we're on social media and we see, everyone's celebrating the this is the thing I put out and this
Yeah.
is great and blah blah blah. And actually, yeah, you're right. It's a process, and that process may mean that your output is, slower at the moment, or, and that's okay,
Yeah.
because, we're not defined by the amount of things that we're putting out, or the amount of things that we're creating. We have to feel fulfilled in ourselves first, I think. Um, and yeah, about quality rather than quantity. Yeah.
Exactly. And like because you're not doing creating something at the same time as somebody else doesn't mean that you're lesser or like you're not going to create something great either. I fall into that trap all the time with social media. It's a
Mm.
balance. I was like, I see something like, why am I not creating something like that?
Yeah, me
Why am
too,
I
me
not
too.
doing something right now? And it's like, well, it's fine. You're going to. You're just not going to do it right now.
Mm,
It's just
mm,
like everyone has their own path. I'm big on that. Like everyone has their own path, and like you can't define yourself based off of somebody else's work.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really important. So
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it's not something that's often taught or talked about, is it? It's a
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And there's like a vulnerability to it. I talk about it with some of my other saxophone colleagues. Like I wish that these people that we admire would show us more vulnerability. I think a lot of younger
yeah.
teachers are, but I think a lot of older teachers who've been successful, they don't want to show any vulnerability because
Mm,
I feel like that was a sign of weakness for
mm,
the older like whatever generation that is before. But um, yeah, its vulnerability is fine. I think it's great because it shows that you're a human being and that like
yeah.
yeah, we make mistakes and things don't always work out, but a lot of things do work out.
Mm,
Um, so
mm,
I really like to give that to my students or to my collaborators, the vulnerability, because we're not all perfect. We're all trying to get better. You know, everyone has bad days. Everyone has good days,
mm,
and it's
mm.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Wilson, for that. That's a really nice thing to be thinking about this morning and carrying that through
Good.
to our days.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
I'm going to think about it today when I'm on my computer at work. So, yeah, when I'm talking to people on the phone and if they have a problem, like it's going to all be all right.
Yeah, we'll get through it. We'll get through
That's exactly
it.
right. I had one question I wanted to ask you, and I didn't, but it's fine. Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Oh, well,
That's more like a me
so
thing. You don't have to put that
yeah.
up.
So right now I'm drinking coffee, but so I grew up being like a tea fanatic, like getting all the leaves and stuff, and
Okay.
brew times and temperature times, and I was a bit of a nerd about it, and I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like a scientific thing, and I since kind of transitioned onto coffee, probably because I depend more on the caffeine at the moment.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm enjoying both actually. I mean, what are you drinking today?
Coffee. And you were talking about being into that like with tea, and I'm like a little bit I'm like into it with coffee.
Mm,
Um
mm,
I don't spend as much time as other people. I think the only unfortunate thing about like experimenting and trying different things with coffee is like having the supplies, like having enough beans. Like
yeah,
it can be expensive to like have like a bunch of bags of beans to experiment in different things. That's my only like uh, stopping point with trying to experiment more, because I know there are things like I want to experiment with or try to like not fix or to just like improve my like pour method or the temperature and
mm,
all that. But it's just like I don't have all the money in the world to buy like have like 2 pounds of beans or something. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um,
Do you know the YouTuber James Hoffman?
yes, I do. Yeah.
I'm slightly obsessed with his videos at the moment.
Yeah, he does a good
Oh,
job. Sometimes I know some people don't like him, but like
mm,
I mean, I think he's very informative, very honest, and like he's not, he gives you his opinion. He's like, I don't like this, but maybe you'll like it,
yeah.
or or vice versa. But yeah, I
Mm,
think he's really cool. Actually, I've referenced a lot of his videos for like different things, or like he does really nice product reviews. of like
Yeah,
stuff that I've like actually bought, um, because it's like just so informative and they're so well made too. Like
yeah,
it's like that type of artistic output that's super interesting to me, like in video making. Like, there's so much work that goes into the production of those videos, and like it
mm,
is really technical, but at the same time, it's really artistic with storytelling.
mm,
It's those content creators that really tell a story that really
yeah.
pull you, and that artistic output is really interesting to me as a storytelling.